Ah, 2021. The slightly less terrible successor to 2020. Still ravaged by disease, but now everyone pretends it's not a problem. I finally got myself a PlayStation 5 right at the end of the year here, so I could finally say that last year's release of Demon's Souls was every bit as good as I expected it to be. Would have been up there. Maybe number 2, maybe even number 1. Probably not number 1. It is exactly the same game, but I digress. Once again, we had a pretty good year of releases to distract ourselves from the 37 distinct variants of the plague, attempted insurrections, and the slow collapse of the environment. Oh boy! And let's not forget that more than half of all phone calls and texts are just annoying scams. Woo! To start us off, I do have an honorable mention I'd like to talk about a little bit, and that's Bowser's Fury. Kind of a miniature game bundled with an HD re-release of an older game, Bowser's Fury was an amazing delight. An open-world Mario game where all the various worlds are visible from anywhere and can be tackled in any order and manner you see fit. Supplemented with a buffet of both classic and new power-ups and abilities, the game served to me as a love letter to the 3D Mario experience, and perhaps a bit of a preview of the kinds of things we might hope to see in the future for the franchise. Of course, I can't not mention the massive kaiju battles. I loved avoiding a horizon-spanning Bowser's attacks, and using those attacks to open hidden things, by the way, as well as battling the Colossus as a giant cat Mario. This short Mario experience has me very excited for the future of the Mario franchise. Honestly, if the game were a little beefier, it would have been high on my list. But given that it's not a full release of a game, and it's bundled with an older game that's just getting an HD reskin, I couldn't bring myself to do it. But this brings me to the list proper. Coming in at number 10, we have Loop Hero. Somehow managing to do the impossible, Loop Hero made me feel invested in playing what is essentially an auto-battler, a genre I typically have zero interest in. Loop Hero sees your titular hero attempting to rebuild all of reality while trying to solve the mystery of how reality wound up being erased. The interesting aspect of this comes from the loops, which start out fairly barren, but slowly develop into challenging landscapes and encounters. The twist to this is that you, the player, build the environment with a deck of cards that you construct. So the encounters, the battles, the weapons, the stats, and everything else are determined by your world-building choices each loop. That means they're only ever as difficult and therefore rewarding as you make them to be. Of course, in order to beat those bosses and advance, you need those good rewards. It all gets a pretty bow on top with a truly stellar soundtrack. And when the boss shows up, the music shift gets me every time. Oh, spoilers, this list will contain a lot of indie games, but that's just because the indie scene is killing it. I mean, take number 9 for instance. Chicory. Chicory was bound to be on my list for pedigree alone, since it's made by the folks who made one of my favorite games I've ever streamed, Wandersong. Seriously, I use the dance club scene for the stream's BRB screens all the time. I love it that much. Chicory sees your adorable protagonist, which you name after your favorite food, so a lot of pizzas out there, I imagine, attempt to restore all color and vibrancy to the world as the latest in a long line of artistically inclined heroes. The problem is that you're the janitor, and the current hero is gripped by depression and given up the brush. So despite your lack of training, and the opinions of the people of the world, you set out to solve the mystery of why the colors are all gone. Filled with an interesting cast of characters and delightful music, you make your way through the world coloring things however you see fit, and battling monsters and forces determined to see the world only in black and white. It's such an adorable little game. Like, you feel the heart in a lot of games you play, but Chicory, you really feel it. And the fact that it's willing to touch on depression and the way it makes us feel like we're in a colorless void, I always appreciate games willing to tackle mental health, even just a little bit. And for that, Chicory gets a lot of praise from me. Coming in at number 8, we have something completely different. It's
Gardeners of the Galaxy?
Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy! To address the confusing aspect of this game first, it's not associated with the movies in any way, which strikes me as very odd. It doesn't even really seem all that associated with the comics either. It's just a self-contained Guardians of the Galaxy experience that uses the roster from the movies, and a more comic book accurate lore and backstory for them. That aside, the game is actually a lot of fun, playing like a more comedy-centric Mass Effect 2, complete with choices that impact the direction of missions and the story. The only real complaint is that streamer mode doesn't actually replace all of the copyrighted music. Instead, it just leaves some scenes feeling empty because it doesn't play any music at all. Oh, it also places an obnoxious watermark right on top of the screen, letting you know it's in streamer mode the entire time you play. Oh, I hate it so much. Like, ooh. But besides that, we have a solid character-driven RPG with a lot of heart and humor. And I really genuinely enjoy the distinctions that happen based on your choices. I streamed one of the earlier missions, and I had folks in chat that never saw any of the stuff I was doing because they tackled the mission in a completely different way. And the choices that led up to that moment happened an hour or two ago. Like, I had honestly forgotten that I'd already built the stage for how it was going to play out for me. So they got to see an entirely different dungeon from my own, and they had a complete experience unique to themselves. I love games like that. So if you enjoy the more character-centric moments of Mass Effect 2 and the combat system as well, it is, again, a very action-oriented RPG where you can command your companions to do specific moves while you yourself are pulling out all of your special tricks, totally check out Guardians of the Galaxy. If you want something absolutely the opposite of what I just described, well, you should stick around for the next one, because coming in at number 7, we have Little Nightmares 2. I absolutely love the Little Nightmares games. Dripping with ambience and creepy monsters, you can't help but feel pulled into the plight of a child you're attempting to navigate through a sinister world of twisted adults and deadly traps. On top of that, it's filled with these tiny little details and secrets that the dedicated player can have all the fun they want, just trying to find these little guys, find these little things. It's the kind of game I really enjoy. Kind of like Celeste. I really like Celeste because you can play that game straight through as a relatively casual player, or you can go through and try and get all the strawberries, try and get all the B-sides, you know? It's the kind of game that rewards two different types of players, and I think Little Nightmares 2 does a great job of that as well. The primary through line for the game, you don't have to be the best video game player in the world to do it, but if you want to tackle all the secrets, collect all the hats, find all the hidden bits, and truly dive into the lore implications about this game and how it ties in with the first game and its DLC, it's there for you. It has some meat on that part of the bone for you to gnaw on. But yes, if you like the first game even a little bit, you owe it to yourself to play Little Nightmares 2. I don't have too much to say about this one, honestly, because it's just right. You know, it's just the right length. It's the perfect little spooky present for yourself this upcoming spooky summer season or October or whenever you want to play it. Just play Little Nightmares 2. Coming in at number 6, we have Deathloop. Not much of a surprise here after watching this game absolutely clean up at the Game Awards. What could have been a pretty standard shooter is elevated well beyond that thanks to some remarkable gameplay ideas, stellar writing, and pitch-perfect voice acting. Testing the player with breaking out of a time loop, the game slowly acclimates you to various interesting mechanics at just the right pace to have them support both your learning the game and the unfolding mystery. Eventually, what was a first-person shooter has turned into a game about managing a loadout of weapons, perks, and skills, all while planning the perfect series of assassinations. The fun gunplay is further heightened by the various Dishonored-style powers the player's been leveling up all along the way. For me, though, the highlight is always the banter between the player character Cole and the primary antagonist Juliana. The two voice actors clearly have great chemistry and had a blast recording their lines. Plus, whenever I want to change a pace to the experience, I can invade other players' worlds in a Dark Souls-style invasion system. Granted, I do think this is a little lopsided, the player character Cole, and I understand why they did this. It's kind of like Dark Souls as well, you know? The main person playing in their world has the benefit and the advantage, and that makes sense. Cole has 3 lives, but he's up against the entire single-player experience. Juliana only has 1 life, but she also has the entire world working on her side. So while I do think it's a little frustrating that if I kill Cole once or twice, it doesn't count as a full win for me, I guess I can't complain too much, because you don't want to ruin the experience for the other player. I just wish maybe it would give me a little bit more credit when I do manage to kill him once or twice, because come on. I took 2 out of his 3 lives. I should get a Sordo you win screen. Throw me a bone here, game. Ooh. We're in the top 5 now. These are the big leagues. And you know what's number 5? Well, let me tell you, it's Lost Judgment. You know what I love? The marriage of a serious crime mystery with a totally over-the-top world of the Yakuza franchise. And that has certainly not changed with Lost Judgment. The sequel to one of my favorite games of 2019. With a new murder mystery in his hands, Yagami finds himself setting up shop in Like a Dragon setting of Yokohama. Best of all, this particular murder has ties to a bullying problem at a local high school. And so Yagami has to go undercover in the high school. This grown-ass man has to participate in all kinds of high school competitions and drama. And I can't get enough of that. Seriously, we're talking like doing dance choreography for the dance club, sitting in with the mystery club. I love this nonsense. I love grown-ass man in a high school setting. Love it. Similar to how Like a Dragon explored Japan's relationship with homelessness, sex work, and the public image, Lost Judgment attempts to explore the culture's relationship with the need to fit in, bullying, and the stress of needing to succeed in a hyper-competitive educational system. Both games don't do perfect jobs of this, but just the fact that they try is laudable in my opinion, even if they sometimes undercut themselves by following up a poignant scene with a very wacky scene. Just the fact that they're willing to do it at all makes me happy. Like I said earlier, anytime a game is willing to say, hey, life sometimes sucks, let's talk about it a little bit. I appreciate that. Well now, at number 4, it's time to get a little bit spookier. With Resident Evil Village.
Oh no, they're coming. Who is?
Resident Evil but with vampires? Werewolves? Fish monsters? Spooky dolls? Some kind of OC of Magneto who was clearly impersonating Nicolas Cage from the movie Vampire's Kiss?
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. Do you understand?
This is obviously a must-play experience from those facts alone. Taking the first-person horror experience of Resident Evil 7, Village sees the return of Ethan Winters as he attempts to find and rescue his infant daughter after what appears to be a hit on his wife by Chris Redfield. A decidedly more action-focused affair from 7, I would describe it as being the love child of Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7. And that merger works way better than I would have expected. My only real complaints are that the first and fourth segments of the game are nice and expansive and feel properly fleshed out. But the second and third are disappointingly short, particularly given that one of them is by far the most interesting and deserving of being fleshed out. It's not the scariest Resident Evil experience, but it truly does harken back to the days of 4, and let me tell you, that's a good thing, if you ask me. Who doesn't have fond memories of Resident Evil 4? It has the right level of campy with the right level of action. And Village kinda does that too. It's campy to just the right level. Again, we're talking Nicolas Cage style Magneto Man. Love him. And of course, Dami Mommy Giant Vampire Woman is bringing her A game, and those things are just the right level of camp. And then the game is able to dip into the creepier moments that you like from those Resident Evil games. It's great. It's the perfect modern Resident Evil game in my opinion. Alright, we're in the top 3 now, and this is where, honestly, the 3 of these games are basically interchangeable for me. Like, any one of these could be number 1. Coming in at number 3, we have a game that broke my heart, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's NieR Replicant. NieR Automata is one of my all-time favorite games, but it always bugged me that I never got into the original NieR. Clunky controls, a protagonist modeled after what the personification of Dower would look like, and a reputation for being a broken mess had me bounce off the game back in the day. Now, here we are with Replicant. The Japanese protagonist is here. The controls are refined and tight. It's only broken on the PC Oh wait, yeah, that's right, the PC version didn't work very well, did it? Oh well, PlayStation 4 version, here we go. With the major limitations of the original removed, what you have now is a game written by Yoko Taro with music composed by Keiichi Okabe. And none of the bad bits! So you can settle down to enjoy a game that will take your emotions and beat the ever-loving hell out of them. Yoko Taro just loves to ruin his players emotionally, while an incredible soundtrack further emphasizes the drama on screen. While the gameplay isn't on Automata's level, and I mean, come on, that was designed by Platinum Games. The only way you're going to get a game as tight as that is to have Platinum Games develop it again. But still, it's leagues better than it once was. The only annoyances left now are the ones you could safely ignore, like the need to grind for rare drops to fully upgrade a weapon you don't use, or hybridizing flowers for a side quest that doesn't even matter. Unless you fall totally in love with the game and feel compelled to do these things anyway. Like me. God damn it, like me. It completely fixes a lot of problems with the older game, fleshes it out, it includes a never-before-seen ending from the radio drama, which I believe is considered the canonical ending going into Automata. It does everything right, doesn't do that much wrong, adds just enough to be a little fresh for people that already played it, and therefore is a well-deserved entrant for number 3, and good lord you have to play it. But if you're not going to play it, you have to play Automata. I'm not kidding about that one. I fucking love that game. Okay, so what managed to beat Replicant? Coming at number 2, we have a game that, ooh, God, I played this the stream was just this game. 3 days in a row, until I completed it. And I loved every goddamn second of it. It's Inscription! Inscription is one of those games that I might classify as more of an experience than anything else. The fact that said experience is carried by some tight gameplay and excellent writing is all the better. At first presented as a roguelite deck builder, the game slowly peels back more and more layers, many of which expand your limits as a player, and others that reveal that there's more to your cramped cabin confines than meets the eye. As is typical with a Daniel Mullins game, the experience slowly becomes warped, twisted, and delightfully meta as you struggle to play the game while also trying to suss out various hidden codes and ARG-style hidden messages. I can't say much else without spoiling the game, and so I won't. Just understand that the less you know before going into this game, the better. Because it's one hell of a trip, and it's one of my favorite parts of 2021 for sure. Like, honestly, I struggled with this and the next game for the top spot, but ultimately, if this game suffers from any fault, it's the lack of replayability once you finish the ride. But don't let that deter you from playing the game, because it's one hell of a ride. And again, ride is an appropriate metaphor here. Much like a roller coaster, you don't know what's coming until you ride it. It's an incredible experience while you're riding it, and then when it's done, you have that fond memory and that feeling of that ride. But once you ride it again, it's not quite the same, because it's that first experience that really brings all those heavy hits. This is one of those games that when people ask you, like, hey, you wish you could ever forget something and re-experience it for the first time? Inscription's one of those games for me. That and Dark Souls 1. God, I would pay a wizard so much money to forget I ever played Dark Souls 1 just to experience it one more time for the first time. But hey, don't mind me. I'm going off on a weird tangent here. I have too much caffeine in my body. You know what game does have a lot of replayability, though? It has so much of it, in fact, that I made it my number 1 game. Yeah, you want to talk about my number 1? Do you? Oh, I hate that click in the background. That's my heater, by the way. Anyway, the number 1 game for 2021 is Rift Wizard. I bet you weren't expecting this for number 1, were ya? Well, don't let the graphics from 1988 distract you, because what you have here is a game with an alarming amount of tactical depth to it. Rift Wizard sees you awaken after a long slumber, bereft of your powers, and the sense that Mordred, your sworn enemy, is near. What follows is 25 levels of intense, turn-based combat, as you slowly amass a collection of spells and skills to counter and defeat the hordes of enemies, and overcome their various resistances and immunities. With pages and pages of spells to choose from, all of which are available from the start, every run will feel different. Seriously, all the spells have upgrade paths that augment and enhance their casting, skills that synergize with various effects and change your playstyle, shrines that further enhance and augment how your spells work, and a variety of items to employ mean that every run is a rewarding series of challenging puzzles to overcome. On top of that, the game comes with a variety of challenge runs to try and master that either limit your resources in some way, or introduce intense modifications to how the enemies and the world work. No game caught me surprised quite like Rift Wizard did, pulling me in and triggering that one more run sensation you get from a satisfyingly difficult game experience. There isn't an ounce of fat into this experience. It's lean, trim, perfect in every goddamn way. And while it takes a while to master the game, anyone can sit down and quickly figure out the basics and get started. I love that! Like, I watched streams of this game for quite a while before I played it. Specifically the developer of Cogmind. Whenever he's not playing Cogmind and explaining his updates, he would play Rift Wizard. And I would get sucked in. And I was like, oh, this game looks incredibly hard. I'll never be able to get into this. And then when I sat down and played it, I was like, oh my god. It's like one of those games where it's incredibly easy to just immediately understand how you move, how you behave, and how things work. And then from there, it gets more and more complex. But that's entirely because of, like, oh, are you paying attention? If you pay attention, everything's there for you. Every single enemy is present on screen. Every bit of information about their hit points, their resistances, their power level, like how much shield they have, all of that is always present. If you want, you can take the time to sit down and plan out every single move, and you'll never get surprised in an unfair way. Every loss in this game is entirely due to you, the player. It's never unfair, and that's incredible. There are so few roguelites where the randomized element to it doesn't feel like it cheated you out of a victory, and I don't think that ever happened to me with Rift Wizard. Almost said Rogue Wizard. Rift Wizard. It's true that there are some enemy combinations that could be brutal, but you could always choose not to engage that particular floor. I really don't have any complaints about Rift Wizard. Well, that's not true. Rift Wizard could stand to have more soundtrack. It doesn't have that many songs. But honestly, beyond that, this is like a perfect game. Like, there's no fat to be trimmed from the experience. Well, there you have it. 10 games that made me forget all about the nightmare that is our existence in the year 2021. Did you play something released this year that should have made the list? Let me know down below. Just to let you know, I'm pretty sure I would really like Metroid Dread. I just haven't played it yet. Like, it came out too late in the year. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I trust I'm probably going to enjoy that one. As always, don't forget to like and survive the next horrible year. What will 2022 bring? What comes after the Greek letters for a plague? I'm so goddamn tired. Can we have a year off or something? Ugh. At least my game of the year for 2022 will be out in February. Oh, Elden Ring, take me home.